Pinball circuit activated.
Here's where I'm at. After getting all of the ground braid put on, I just basically copied it from the original playfield. Just ran it across, stapled it in. All the obstacles are soldered on. All of the pop sockets are soldered on. And all of these guys I cleaned them off with a wire Dremel, and went from there. So I'm gonna screw these rollovers in, and then I'll be ready to move that over to here. So I use my piece of plywood, sheet of plywood method, put everything on, shifted everything over onto this playfield, and I've just kind of set things in place generally where they go. And now all I'm gonna do is go through, clean things as I go, and just start installing different pieces. I do like to get the braid leads soldered in first, because those can get a little bit challenging to solder in once you get the big pieces on. Luckily, this playfield's really open, so it's going to be pretty easy to get to things. Sometimes if they're really packed, it gets difficult. I took a whole bunch of pictures of these wires before I desoldered them, and these will all get soldered onto these obstacles. So I'm going to get going. So one thing you may have to do on a game when you're restoring it is replace the little plastic head that goes on these slingshot arms, okay? So this game, actually, both heads were missing. There were no plastic heads on here at all, which is why you see the little pin just hanging out there. So sometimes these plastic heads get worn, you know, they're just beat up, they're cracked, whatever. So you have to replace them. So you get replacement head, okay? And there's a little friction pin right here that I just take out with a pair of ice grips. You squeeze it and work it out of there. Okay. So now I've got my pin. Focus. All right, so now what I normally do is I will get the pin started in one side of this piece. And it kind of has to be a side, I mean, it doesn't really matter, because let me show you how this is going to work. So this just follows the contour of the arm, and it's going to sit just like that, but you got to get the pin in that hole. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll put the pin, just start it in that plastic hole there, because it's easier to get it started, and then I use a little hammer to just hammer it in. So let me get that started in there. There we go. Now you're going to slide it onto the arm like that, and you just kind of use the other side to make sure you're lined up in the hole, because otherwise obviously it's not going to work right. So let's just push up just a little right there. Okay, so now I'm lined up. So now what I'm going to do is put this down on my vise. I'll take my hammer and just start to tap this in. Okay, and it kind of starts to go in like that. And now you've got to get it to where it'll kind of pop through. So I just do like this with my vise to where it's going to have a space to go. Just like that. So now the pin is through, and you can even it up if you want it to look pretty, you know, whatever, like that. But now that head is on there, and it's not going to go anywhere, and this can now be installed. Cabinet update. Work on the cabinet stalled for about a week and a half or so, because we had a pretty big winter storm come through, and there was ice and snow on the ground, which makes it difficult to paint. So I shifted over to work on the playfield mostly during that time, but now we're back to more normal February temperatures here in Dallas-Fort Worth. So I was able to get the cabinet sorted out. I'll kind of go over what I did to it. You can see This particular game had a lot of indentations in the cabinet from the legs. So I filled all of those with Bondo fiberglass. This was the biggest one. And this one was really deep into the cabinet. So I did end up having to do 3 or 4 different layers of the Bondo fiberglass to get that filled. The rest of the cabinet was okay. We did have a pretty big seam here that was filled, and a big seam and step off in the back there that I filled. There was a chunk out of the bottom here, so I took care of that. And otherwise the cabinet is ready for primer. The head is over here. And the head was pretty good. A couple little spots here and there that I ended up filling. There was a dent here that I filled. Otherwise it was pretty straightforward. The head was pretty good. So what I'm gonna do now is blow this off with my air compressor and then tack cloth it off to get all the dust off. And I'm going to shoot my Zinsser 123 primer, water-based primer on this. I'll do 1 good coat, let it dry for 24 hours, and then I sand that with 220 grit sandpaper, just real quickly, just to take all of the sort of rough surface off. It'll get another coat of Zinsser 123, sand that, and then it'll get 2 coats of white base coat. And again, I use my Clark & Kensington hybrid Alkyd enamel, which is a water-based paint, but does stencil very well and adheres well, and I haven't had issues with it delaminating. So I'm gonna do that, and that'll get 2 coats with sanding in between. And then I'm probably gonna shoot a video of the speckling, but you can see here, this game was speckled. And it looks like it's a gold speckle color to me. So I'm gonna be speckling the cabinet in gold as well to keep it correct to the original. So next video that you'll see, next episode of the cabinet update will be after priming and base coating is completed and we're ready to speckle. Speckling's done. It went okay. I don't know if you can see this or not. The speckling's a little finer than what I would have really wanted, but I think it was probably because it may have been because it was metallic and maybe it doesn't, you know, stick together quite as well or something. I kind of wanted more bigger speckles like that, but didn't get them, but that's okay. There's a lot of other color on this cab, so I think it'll be fine. If you're wondering, to speckle, you need a nozzle like that. So you can buy these online with a little tube in them. And then what you need is let's see if this one's right. Nope. You need a can with a top like that, because that's what this nozzle will fit in. And then what you have to do is just barely depress the nozzle. If you depress it fully, you're gonna get really fine speckling. So barely depress it, it's gonna kind of splutter out, and you need to be about 3-ish feet away and just work in quick little splurts. It's really just, I would recommend if you're gonna do it for the first time, really practice a lot. Get yourself like a piece of cardboard or something. You can see I was kind of doing some practicing here and stuff before you do it on the cabinet. Just so you don't get it too heavy in different areas. I mean, you know, the whole idea is it's supposed to be random, but so anyhow, so now I'm gonna go ahead and stencil. So I've got my Pinball Pimp stencils over here. When you do these, make sure you pay attention to the instructions. They're really straightforward. So what I do with these is trim them. I go ahead and trim them all the way, just because it makes it easier for you to align. And so you can see this is for the right side of the head, and you can see how much pink is going to be on this, which is why I wasn't too obsessed about the speckling being perfect, because there's a lot of color on this cabinet. The white is really just a background. So, all right, I'm going to get this stencil prepped and applied, and I'll come back. So to do a stencil, here's what I get together, okay? X-Acto knife, fresh blade, fresh razor blade, tweezers, very helpful. This is just regular Home Depot blue masking tape. This is Tamiya masking tape. Now this is sold in like hobby shops and model shops. This I use if I have an edge, and I'll show you on this game. If you have an edge that you want to be really straight, you want this. The paint will bleed under this stuff because the seal on the edge isn't as good. This stuff will give you a straight edge. So I use this if I have to have a really straight edge. This is just to attach the paper that'll mask everything else off. You need scissors. You need a tack cloth. I use these little alligator clips because I wrap, after I put the paper on, I wrap the whole piece in a drop cloth and use those alligator clips to secure it. And that's how I stencil. Oh, you also need some paint cans. So I'm gonna kind of show you guys how I do this. I've shown you this before, but maybe you haven't watched any of my other videos, I don't know. So here's the right side of the stencil. It says paint pink first, okay? And it's player's right. So when you're facing the game, that's the right side. The other clue, I mean, you can look online at pictures and stuff, but this little space here on Bally's almost always goes up against the front. So on this game, on this particular one, what I'm gonna have to do with the Tamiya tape is tape here, okay? And then I'll put a piece of tape all the way along this edge so I get a nice clean edge, and all along the bottom edge. The rest of it, since it's already got stencil, I can just do with the blue masking tape and then the paper. So let me get that done. Oh, sorry. First step is to apply your stencil. So I've placed it where I want it to be, okay? And on the head, it doesn't really, I mean, just center it, you know, get it square. I use 2 small paint cans to weight it down. I'm gonna peel off the backing and cut a flap here. Put this down with that burnishing tool, and now you can remove your 2 cans and then you burnish it down the rest of the way. So I'll show you how to do that. Step 1, after you've got your stencil placed where you want it, cut your flap. So what you're gonna do is take this, I've got these weighted down, these are, you know, like half full paint cans, and just peel it back. And I try and get a good, like 4-inch piece. Cut the backing off. Okay. And now what you're gonna do, make sure you don't jerk it around anywhere. Come here with your burnishing tool, and you're just gonna stick this down. Pretty easy. Now you can remove your paint cans. Don't need your scissors anymore. You will need your tack cloth and your burnishing tool. So we're gonna pull this up, and I give this one final go with the tack cloth. You just wanna make sure that you're nice and clean surface, so this is gonna stick properly. Now you're gonna peel this back, and you just, at this phase, you just gotta be careful of any small details. I go from the center, and I push out after that. I always get the center first. If you try and burnish from the edges, you have more of a chance of getting it off center, which you do not want. So just pull it back, burnish it down, pull it back some more, burnish it down. Go ahead and take the rest of it off. Now I try to not touch the actual stencil part if I can, just so it gets on there. The rest of this, obviously this backing doesn't matter because you're gonna take it off anyway. All right, just go over the actual stencil parts. Make sure you're down. And now you can start to pull this up. So, You do have this little, anything that's marked with an X, you want to try and keep on the game, because those are going to be your location points for your next layer of stenciling. So I'm just going to try and get that off of there. You can just tear it is the easiest way. And then if you come, now it's kind of hard because it's just a stupid triangle. Let's come across like that. It should come off without too much trouble. Once you get it started and you get a little bit of surface tension going on the actual stencil pieces, it gets easier. But these edges can be a pain. One thing I try to not do is get too much surface tension going. On this one, it doesn't matter as much where I'm at because this is all just going to be painted anyway, and this is all just open. But if you have a stencil where there's, you know, actual detail going on, you can, if you do too much surface tension, you'll start to stretch the vinyl, and then that can cause problems. So I just try and do like a third of it at a time. When you get to detail parts like this rose here, just make sure you're looking at the back edge of this backing very closely so that if you start to pull up pieces of stencil, you can correct and stick it back down and go back over it before you start to rip the vinyl. So, and again, that's easier if you're not pulling the whole stencil all at once. Okay, so go up here. Just come across this way. There you go. When you're coming across the pieces of vinyl, one tip is to try and make sure that your pull direction is not, I guess, parallel to where the stencil line is. So for example, if I was pulling, you guys can't see it, but this rose goes this way. You don't want to pull this way. You want to kind of try and pull across. If you pull parallel with the line, you're going to put more shear stress on the actual vinyl, and you'll have a higher chance of ripping it or stretching it or whatever. What I do is I take my Tamiya tape and I'm going to tape off any areas that I know I want an absolutely straight line. So I'm going to go to the back edge here and just go right along the edge to where the stencil begins. And do it like that. And I'll do the same thing at the bottom here. And this just prevents overspray and your stencil not looking good. Let's put that down there. Okay. And wait a minute. This needs to be pink, so that needs to come off. Yeah. That was just a locator one, now that I'm looking at it. So that definitely needed to come off. The actual locator ones, if you look, there'll be a little square that's already cut around them. That's because when you pull this stencil off, these squares are going to stay behind, and those are your locator points for your next stencil. Now, if you've got enough room, which I think I do, what I can do right now is use the cheaper blue tape and just come in here, and I just try and get it stuck down with, you know, a decent amount of space. You want to make sure you overlap with the actual stencil plenty, because again, this blue tape will not stop the paint. It'll leak right under it, and you'll have a mess that you gotta then go back and touch up. Okay, next step is just gonna be to put your paper on. So for this, a couple of pieces of tape here. And these will just be kind of the locator pieces. And I'll just bring it where I want it to be. Make sure it's kind of overlapping. And I just stick the tape to the other blue tape. Could you do this all at once? Probably, But again, I've been burned by incomplete tape jobs before, so I don't like leaving any possibility that there's holes or spots, or because man, I tell you what, if there's a way for that paint to bleed underneath, it 100% will. That mist goes everywhere. Okay, so for this one, next step, I take a drop cloth and wrap it around the entire head. And this is really just a step I do, is it gonna fit? On the head. I don't do it as much, or really that much at all. I don't wrap the cabinet because it's a bigger surface. This one just, you know, you'll get issues with paint falling down on the inside of the other side of the head if you don't do this step. If you don't have a drop cloth, I don't know, go buy a drop cloth. I guess you could wrap it, but that's a lot of paper to waste for that. So we're just gonna clip this together a couple times. And then you can use your tape. And I go ahead and just tape it in a few spots just so it doesn't slide down over the course of the paint job here. And you want to make sure that the bottom part of this head, especially on the inside, is completely covered, because that is where you'll have little spots where it's like, oh look, it fell through, you know, or it didn't cover it up, and then you've got paint down there. Give everything a once over and make sure there's no little spots like this that are sticking out. Look and see, is there anywhere where paint could go through? Stick everything down. Then what you're gonna do is I go with my finger and I just go over the edges of the stencil and make sure that it's adhered as well as you can to the surface. If you have little crinkles or bubbles or anything, now is the time to get those off, because your paint will bleed underneath. Paint I'm using is Montana Hardcore, and this is called Akari Red. It's a pink, but it's kind of a more of a hot pink. It's the closest I could get to the original in a spray paint. And it's probably pretty close to what it looked like originally, because the paints all fade over time. Dollies always have this sort of pale, almost like a shell pink, but that's just because it faded. If you ever take one apart and look underneath the rails, it was much more of this bright pink color. Now this Montana paint comes out quick, so you gotta be a little bit away from it. I do one thin coat over everything and then come back with a heavier coat. Before you do this, make sure you're ready to do everything. I've got my tools over there to pull the stencil. I've got this all ready. I've got my gloves on. I got my main cabinet drop cloth so it's not going to get paint on it. Okay. Now you start to disassemble. With the Montana paint, you've got more time to work. If you ever don't listen to my advice and use Rust-Oleum, which is a huge mistake, you do not have time to work. Because Rust-Oleum will start to string on you very quickly. Okay, now you can remove your Tamiya pieces of tape. All right, now is where you want to have like your tweezers and your X-Acto knife handy. Just pull this off, and you want to try and cut this at as close, again, to a 90-degree angle as possible. Same kind of technique. Kind of reset your hands if you need to. So it's just going to come off. And then you want to roll this down, grab as you go. One tip, don't try and get it all off at once. If you have to tear it, just tear it. It's easier to deal with that way. Tear's not going to hurt you. Dipping the stencil into your stenciled area will. This is trying to move on me. Stay put. Okay. All right, now what you do is get your X-Acto knife and your tweezers, and this is where you get this stuff. This is another spot where you need to check your hands, because if you've had a messy pull and you have paint on your hands, this is where you'll get little paint things in the rest of your rest of the thing that you don't want. So I try and keep my right hand clean and use my left hand for the pulling part. Come on, stupid. Once you get it clear, you can kind of grab it. Okay. Now come over here. Grab that piece. Try and just work this one as free as I can. There we go. This is where I use Montana paint. It is very user-friendly. It gives you a lot of time to work, so you don't have to get all stressed out, and you can take this off correctly. Let's go this way. There we go. All right, there's that. Now my other tip is, at this point, if you see anything wrong with it, just walk away. Do not try and fix anything now. Don't be tempted to, oh, I'll just clean that up or whatever. Let this dry. It's way easier to fix when it's dry. These are your location points, so don't worry about those. Those are fine. Those are going to come off when you do the next stencil.